Good morning. So today we're going to be talking about data types. So yeah, we have various types of data in Elixir. So we're going to be taking them one after the other, explaining them and showing examples of how these data types are used and how you should know which data type you are using. So dive in with us. Okay. So on this basis has installation and the rest. So basic data type. This is where we're going to start. So we're going to start with integers. So in when we if we're coming from the object oriented programming, or we are coming from the functional programming side, going to be we have actually have learned about integers, right? So we know integers as data types. So like let me put an example of integer. So I'm going to put and age. So I'm going to say is equals to 25. So this is an integer and you can use this is here shows the various type of data type. If you write a data type and you want to confirm, so we're going to say is it binary, so it's age binary and we're going to pass age. So we're going to evaluate and we get a false because age is not a binary. Age is actually an integer. So integer are used for we use it for calculation. So we're just going to do a normal calculation here. So we're going to say sum is equals to age. So we're going to inspect to see what it returns for us and we get 75. So we see we can use numbers for so integers are numbers, so integers are numbers, but numbers also can be a float. But since we're talking about integers, let's not move into floats and cause a hell of confusion. So let's stick to integers. So integers are numbers without decimal. So if for example now if I put 0.00 right now and I evaluate, this is no longer an integer. Right now I'm dealing with float, so this is an integer data type. They are just numbers. So let's see what Elixir's school have to say about integers. Support for binary, octa and hexadecimal comes in built into 6. So these are just what they have to say about integers. So let's come over here to data type and we have integer over here. So I'm going to open this in a new tab. So we're going to read from Elixir documentation what it has to say about integer. So some function that works with integer are division, maximum, minimum, remainders. So you can do all this kernel function works with integer. Is even, so we can do is even. So let's find out if our number is even or not. So I'm gonna say so let's see if it's even is okay. Is even is now a kernel function. So let's see how do we use this is even. So it's a card. Integer dot is even. So integer is a module now. Most times if you're doing string, if you notice when we're doing string, we have some function that comes with string. So that means that's why they told us now this is an example of how to use it. So they have some function that comes with integer, so they are guards that you can use. So a module now is a bundle of functions. So in integer now, integer has now a lot of functions that inside the module of integer that you can use to know if it's even or if it's odd. So that's why when we use just only it, we got it wrong. But now let's call it the proper way by calling the module. So it's a kernel module, so we don't have to import it or anything. So when we get it, we get so let's see what happened. Undefined function. Integer is even is undefined. However, there is a micro with the same limit. Okay, so if we say let me see what's happening. Let's see how to use it. Integer that is even is undefined. However, there is a micro with the same name, and I need to be sure to require integer if you intend to invoke this. Okay. Let's ask ChatGPT what this error is trying to say. So we should require it. So we're going to learn how to use these functions. Okay, so we have to say require integer. Okay, so let's understand why not a regular function. When using micro from a module, you need to require the module first. Okay, so we have to require it. So let's see. So now we got to learn that when we want to use a micro module, we have to require. It's not like a kernel that you can use without having to require it. So, and this is some kernel function we can do. So we can say kernel dot so what do we want to divide 20h by 2? So let's see results is supposed to, so that we can io.inspect and see what comes back. So we get 12. So this is what comes back when we divide h by 2. This is what comes back. So, and it's even, it's not an even number, but if you do is odd, which is also one of the function in the module of integer, we get it as true because 25 is an odd number. So coming here, we learned. So this gives us the basic, but coming over here, this is like an expansion of that. Sorry, yeah. So this is an expansion of the integer function, giving us various functions that we can use for integers, examples and everything. So you can come here and practice the various things you can do with an integer value. So that's just gonna be all for now for integer. So you can do integer to string. That means you can turn a integer to a street value. So let's practice with this one to see. So age, we get it as true. Then if you do is binary now, it's binary of age. We should get it now as true because okay, let's just do this and say it's binary. We get it as false because we did not call. So if we call this, we said it that if a particular data cannot be is immutable. So at first it is the data type is an integer. So if you want to convert it to age and you do integer to age, you have to give it a new variable. So you have to put the result in a new variable. So when we do it like that, we get it as true. But if we try to check age, because age when we call it first of all is called a integer, so no matter the whatever we work in age, whatever we do, the subtraction and everything, age will always give us 25 because data is immutable in Elixir. So that's one knowledge we should never forget, that data is immutable. And so over here we have talked about integer. So we have talked about integer. So let's deal with our next data type. So our next data type is boolean. So in our last video we have talked about strings, so we're not going to be treating strings here. This is where we are supposed to treat string, but we have treated string when we deal with function, modules, and the other aspect of basics. So currently right now we're trying to treat other types of data type being treated. So we're going to go to string. So stay with us. So string in Elixir are oh sorry, we are not treating string. I made a mistake. We're supposed to go to boolean. Okay, so boolean. So boolean is not here, but boolean is a data type. So let's see what boolean. Elixir supports true and false as booleans. Everything is truthy except for a false or a new value. So what they mean by everything is truthy is if I say name equals to Ijoma, let me put it as a string, Ijoma, and I do is boolean and I put name, it's gonna give me a false. It's not a boolean actually. But when they say Elixir treats everything as true and false in the boolean state is that, so if I say so I guess it's true because name is actually Ijoma, and so it gives you a true value. So that's why we say in Elixir everything can either be true when it has value, it is true. If it does not have value, it is false. So yeah, so boolean is either true or false or new. So when it's new is false by default, but once it has a value, so everything is true except for false and new. So false and new value will always give you false and new value is always going to give you a false. So yeah, everything else in Elixir is true. So the true will give you, so anything that has a data will always give you true. So if you say if it's new or anything like that, so Elixir treats boolean. So we use boolean to do checking. For example, if you want to say is the way we did this if and else right now, so this is a part of the condition where we used boolean. This is a part of condition where we use boolean to check that if it's this the true s false. So we use it for if condition or less case. Most times we use it to just do a check-in to check if this is valid and give us a true, and if it's true we can do a condition that say when it's true we write a statement that would get printed out. So that's all on boolean. So on our third data value we are going to be talking about float. So we're going to be talking about float. So when we're talking about binary, when we're talking about integer, then so float is equals to any integer that has a decimal. So a float always have a decimal, and when you are doing division, the result is always in a float in Elixir. So let me give you an example. This is 25, right? So if I say result is equals to 25 divided by 3, I print. So this is a float value. So if I say is float and I print result, you see I'm gonna get a true because it is actually a float. But if I put float and I ask for result, I'm going to get a false because this is a integer. But if I make it like this and ask, I'm going to get a true now because this is a float. So the only difference between an integer and a float is that a float has reminder like a decimal. So floats are used when we are doing division, and float has a decimal then has values after the decimal. So whenever you see a data that has a decimal and have value after the decimal, it's in Elixir is being treated as a float. So let's go over here and see what in float require a decimal after at least one digit. So you see floating point number require a decimal after one digit. They have 64-bit double precision and support exponentials. So this is a syntax error. This doesn't come as a float. You must have a value before this. So let's go to Elixir documentation and see what it says about float. So you can use round or tronic. These are like some of the kernel functions you can use. So in float you can use all these functions. So the way we did for integer where we have to require it is just the same way when you are dealing with float. So let's play around with float to max infinite. So we're going to do require so you don't use it with a value, it doesn't require a value, it just takes nothing. So we can do float.flow. .0. So this is the floor. So let's see what the floor function is actually about. Okay, so it's to round up a float. So these are like there are so many functions under a float that you can use to play around with a float and use it to achieve various things. So that's all we're going to be treating today. So the next time we meet, we're going to see if there's any other thing we haven't covered on the basic. We've treated boolean. Okay, so we're going to be treating atoms, and the next thing we're going to be going into is the basic operations in Elixir. So that will be the roundup on our basics. Then we'll move into dive into other aspects of Elixir programming language. See you and thanks for staying.